The single most important financial deal of the last century just expired, and your financial future will never be the same. For 50 years, this invisible agreement guaranteed American power. Now, the pillars are crumbling, and the global financial system is entering uncharted territory where the old rules no longer apply. This isn't speculation. This is the end of the petrodollar system, the secret engine of American dominance since 1974, and the consequences will ripple through your bank account, your investments, and the very price of everything you buy. What we're witnessing isn't just a financial shift, but the rearrangement of global power itself, a transformation that will define the rest of your life. To understand what comes next, we must first understand the extraordinary deal that built our modern world. It was 1974. The US was reeling from the OPEC oil embargo that had brought America to its knees. The dollar was weak, inflation was soaring into double digits, and American influence was fading fast. Then, in a moment of geopolitical genius, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia with an audacious proposal that would become the foundation of American financial supremacy for half a century. This was the financial equivalent of a nuclear treaty. The deal was simple in concept, yet it would reshape global power for generations. The United States would offer unprecedented military protection, advanced weaponry, and security guarantees to Saudi Arabia. In return, the Saudis would do two world-altering things that seemed insignificant at the time, but would echo through history. They would price all of their oil sales exclusively in US dollars, and they would recycle their massive petrodollar revenues back into US Treasury bonds, creating a perfect financial symbiosis. This created a perfect, self-reinforcing financial loop that economists would later call the dollar's exorbitant privilege. Every country needed oil to power their economies. To buy oil, they needed dollars. To get dollars, they had to trade with America or borrow from American banks. The global demand for dollars became insatiable, making it the world's undisputed reserve currency practically overnight. It was the financial equivalent of a nuclear treaty, locking the world into a dollar-based system that seemed unbreakable. The petrodollar system transformed the dollar from a simple currency into the ultimate strategic asset. It allowed America to run massive trade deficits, finance expensive foreign wars, and maintain a standard of living that defied conventional economic gravity. For 50 years, we lived in a dollar-dominated world where American consumers enjoyed cheap goods and American policymakers enjoyed unparalleled global influence. But all empires of faith eventually face a crisis of belief, and the petrodollar system was no exception. The first major crack appeared in the early 2000s when geopolitical realities began to shift. Saddam Hussein, in a direct challenge to American power, announced he would sell Iraqi oil for euros rather than dollars, threatening to break the petrodollar monopoly. Later, Muammar Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed African dinar for oil trade that would have created an independent African financial system. Both leaders were removed from power, and their currency projects died with them. The message to the world was clear. Challenging the dollar's dominance was an unforgivable red line that would be met with overwhelming force. But the world kept changing despite America's efforts to maintain control. The unipolar moment of American dominance is over, and now the kingpin of the petrodollar system itself, Saudi Arabia, is publicly breaking ranks in ways that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. In 2024, Saudi Arabia has openly agreed to accept multiple currencies for its oil, including Chinese yuan, euros, and even their own digital currency. This isn't a temporary negotiating tactic or a minor policy shift. It's a fundamental reorientation of global strategy that strikes at the very heart of dollar hegemony. The House of Saud is systematically diversifying its alliances and its financial exposure in recognition that the global balance of power is shifting irrevocably. Why would Saudi Arabia abandon the very deal that made them incredibly wealthy and secure for 5 decades? The reasons are both geopolitical and financial, reflecting a new global reality. America is no longer dependent on Middle Eastern oil, thanks to the shale revolution that transformed the United States into the world's largest oil producer. Meanwhile, China has quietly become Saudi Arabia's largest oil customer, and they're increasingly demanding to pay in their own currency. But perhaps the most important reason may be simple self-preservation in an increasingly multipolar world. The Saudis watched in horror what happened to Russia's dollar reserves after the Ukraine invasion. Hundreds of billions of dollars frozen instantly by Western sanctions. They realized with chilling clarity that dollar dominance comes with political strings attached that could be pulled at any moment. By moving strategically away from exclusive dollar dependence, they are building financial sovereignty and ensuring their survival in whatever new world order emerges from the current transition. This monumental shift didn't happen overnight. The foundation has been cracking for years as rival powers built alternative systems. Since 2016, China has been aggressively constructing parallel financial infrastructure. The petro-yuan, launched in 2018, allows countries to buy oil with Chinese currency through Shanghai futures contracts. The Belt and Road Initiative creates infrastructure dependencies across the developing world. And BRICS, the coalition of emerging economies, is actively discussing a new reserve currency to challenge dollar hegemony directly. We're witnessing the slow, deliberate construction of a parallel financial universe, one that doesn't answer to Washington or follow American rules. This alternative system grows more sophisticated with each passing year, attracting nations that feel left behind by the Western-dominated financial order. So, what happens when the petrodollar system fully unwinds over the coming years? Let's follow the dominoes to understand the real-world impact. First, global demand for US dollars will gradually but steadily decline. Countries will no longer need to stockpile enormous dollar reserves for oil purchases. This means foreign governments and investors will naturally buy fewer US Treasury bonds, ending the automatic financing of American deficits that we've enjoyed for decades. Fewer buyers for US debt means the government will have to pay significantly higher interest rates to attract lenders. Those higher rates will ripple through the entire American economy like a shockwave, making mortgages, car loans, credit cards, and business expansion credit more expensive for everyone. The era of cheap money that fueled American prosperity will come to an abrupt end. Second, the dollar's value will likely decline substantially over time as its special status erodes. A weaker dollar means more expensive imports. Everything from smartphones and computers to clothing and automobiles will cost more at your local stores. While this might help US exports in theory, it will act as a hidden tax on American consumers, further squeezing household budgets already stretched thin by years of inflation. But the third consequence is the most dangerous for average Americans: the potential for dramatic inflation, unlike anything we've seen in generations. As the dollar's international role diminishes, other countries may begin dumping their dollar reserves in a classic currency crisis. This flood of dollars returning home could trigger the kind of price spikes we haven't witnessed since the 1970s, devastating savings and retirement accounts. Now, this transition won't happen overnight. The dollar's dominance won't collapse in a week or a month. The process will be gradual, measured in years rather than months, with periods of stability followed by sudden jumps. But the direction is now unmistakable to anyone who studies the trends. We've passed the point of peak dollar dominance, and what comes next is uncertainty. The crucial question isn't if the petrodollar system will end, but how quickly the transition occurs and how prepared we are for the aftermath. This isn't the end of the dollar as an important currency, but it is the end of the dollar's monopoly and the extraordinary privileges that came with it. So where does this leave you personally? What can you do to protect your wealth in this new multipolar currency world? History offers clear lessons from previous reserve currency transitions that we would be foolish to ignore. First, consider diversifying geographically rather than remaining purely invested in dollar-denominated assets. International stocks, foreign real estate, and assets denominated in other strong currencies can provide a crucial hedge against dollar weakness and domestic inflation. Second, remember that tangible assets often preserve value best during monetary transitions. Gold has survived the fall of every paper currency in history, maintaining purchasing power through wars, revolutions, and financial collapses. It's no coincidence that central banks are buying gold at record rates right now. They see the writing on the wall. And third, Focus on assets with real utility that people need regardless of what happens to currencies. Productive farmland, energy resources, infrastructure, and companies with strong global franchises that can thrive in any currency environment. These real assets tend to maintain their value when paper wealth evaporates. The end of the petrodollar system doesn't mean the end of American prosperity, but it does mean the end of American financial exceptionalism. We're returning to a more competitive, multipolar world where economic discipline matters more than currency privilege, where we can no longer count on the rest of the world to finance our deficits automatically. For 50 years, we enjoyed an extraordinary advantage that no other nation in history has possessed. That advantage is now fading into history. The countries and individuals who thrive in the coming decade will be those who recognize that the rules have changed dramatically and adapt accordingly rather than clinging to the outdated assumptions of a disappearing era. If you want to be among those who navigate this transition successfully rather than being victimized by it, understanding what's happening to the petrodollar is your essential first step toward financial preparedness in a new economic age. If this perspective helped you see the bigger financial picture clearly, please support this channel by hitting the like button and subscribing to Financial Historian 2.0. We decode the patterns of the past to help you navigate the uncertainties of the future.